So what these people developed, the product that they developed, is actually something that's been around for a long time. It's a medium chain triglyceride oil, or MCT oil for short. And it's been known since the 1960s, or maybe even sooner, that the liver metabolizes medium chain triglyceride oil to ketone bodies. And ketone bodies are very simple molecules that your cells can use as an alternative fuel. Dr. George Cahill in the 1960s discovered that the neurons can use ketone bodies as an alternative fuel to glucose. And this has a lot to do with why we were able to evolve as a species. During times of feast, we would build up carbohydrate or glucose stores in our body and add fat to our bodies. And during times of famine, when there was no food for days and days, you would first use up your carbohydrate stores, your glucose stores, and then switch over and start burning fat and making it to ketone bodies. And the ketone bodies go directly into the brain circulation, and the brain can use them as a fuel. So your body would basically switch over from using glucose to ketone bodies.
Right.
So what these people, they looked at this biochemical fact, and it occurred to them that if people eat medium chain triglyceride oil, they will have ketones circulating. Well,
this fits in, by the way, with weightlifters use medium chain triglycerides often just before they perform, because it gives them a burst of energy to enable them to lift heavier weights.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's feeding the muscles as well as the brain.
Right, and much of it is converted directly to energy instead of being stored as fat.
Right, the liver processes it straight away.
Right, to energy. So the thing is, in this country, we're using oils that don't contain medium chain triglycerides normally. Soybean oil, olive oil does not, safflower, none of the peanut oil, none of the common oils that we use contain medium chain triglycerides.
Right.
However, what I learned from this patent application is that medium chain triglyceride oil is derived from coconut oil.
Right.
Well, when I read that, I knew I'd seen coconut oil in the health food stores, and it just set me off on a frenzy of research that particular night. I looked online about coconut oil. I had to remind myself which are the short and medium chain, long chain fatty acids. I figured out from a nutritional breakdown of coconut oil that it was about 60% medium chain triglyceride oil. And looking at the dosage that they used for their studies, which was about 20 grams of medium chain triglyceride oil, I figured out that about just a little over 2 tablespoons of coconut oil would give you 20 grams of medium chain triglyceride oil.
2 tablespoons, that's not a big dose.
It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Unfortunately, that night, it was too late. It was about 1 a.m. at the point that I thought I have to go to sleep. We had a 9 a.m. appointment in St. Pete, but there was no way to get coconut oil before that.
Right.
So we went on down for the screening for Steve. And he had an MMSE done at that point. And the very disappointing news was that he needed to have an MMSE of at least 16 to qualify for the study, and he only scored a 14.
A 14. So this is compared to a normal of 13. He was at the 14
At the 14 level, which is getting quite down in the low moderate range.
Yes.
So he did not qualify, and we were very shocked, very disappointed.
Yes.
The doctor there said, well, let's evaluate him a little bit further while you're here, and we'll talk. She spent a considerable amount of time with us. We really appreciated that. And she said, let's do this clock study. It's very specific for Alzheimer's disease. So she asked Steve to draw a clock. And it was, you or I would not look at that and see that this is a clock. And Steve later said that he really could not even picture what a clock looked like at that point. Several random small circles and several numbers, not even 1 through 12. And the physician took me aside And she said, you know, he's getting a little worse than moderate. He's starting to get into the severe range. So we left very distressed. We knew there was a screening the next day. There was still a little hope there that maybe he would get into that drug trial. It happened to be a vaccine to remove beta amyloid from the brain. I recalled that I had seen coconut oil at a health food store. I had always wondered, why is coconut oil there? There's some misconceptions about it.
Sure.
And so we stopped at the health food store. I thought, what have we got to lose? You know, we're going to try this. In the patent application, the studies that they did showed that about half the people, almost half, 47%, had an improvement in their cognitive scores, their memory scores, over the period of time that they tested, and the other half declined very slightly. So I felt, well, this is something that could improve them and perhaps at least stabilize. And you know, I felt like, okay, we can live with where we're at now. Even if he stays the same, you know, we can live with this. So, you know, what have we got to lose? We're going to try this. So we picked up the coconut oil, and in the studies they had given the dose at breakfast. So I thought, okay, tomorrow morning, you know, we'll give it to him. And he was scheduled the next day for another screening in Tampa.
Right.
And this was at 1 in the afternoon that he was scheduled. So I went ahead and put just over 2 tablespoons in his oatmeal. We had a little, coconut oil tends to be semi-solid at room temperature. So I thought, well, we'll put it in a little hot cereal, and that will melt down. He'll have something to eat it with instead of just taking it right off the spoon. And I took an equivalent amount myself. I thought, I'm not going to make him take anything I won't take. Good idea. So he you know, had breakfast, and then several hours later we were heading down to Tampa, and I tried to help him, you know, remember things like, what is the season? It was spring. He couldn't even remember the word spring. We must have talked about it 10 times. Mm-hmm. He could not come up with the word over and over. Mm-hmm. And the month, you know, the date, things like that, he couldn't remember. The last time we had been there, could not remember the town, the county, you know. But even though we'd been there many, many times.
Right, but you later found that it takes approximately 3 hours for the coconut oil to have an effect.
Right, right. So that explains why, you know, a couple hours later we weren't seeing anything. But what happened when he got there for the test, they took him away to do the MMSE. And when he came back, he was actually kind of disappointed. He said, I don't think I did very well. And but the research assistant came in, and she started taking his blood pressure, and she talked about drawing blood. And I said, well, what's going on here? How did he do? And she says, oh, didn't he tell you? He got an 18.
So he went from 14 to
18 the very next day.
In one day?
In one day.
With 2 tablespoons of coconut oil?
Right. And
that's astonishing.
And it kicked in. His memory kicked in.
What,
he remembered.
His memory kicked in
at that point for the test.
Right, right.
He remembered it was spring. He knew he was in Tampa, in Hillsborough County. He knew he was at they named the building he was in. He knew what floor he was on. You know, things that he could not recall at all. Marvelous. You know, for the previous test.
Absolutely marvelous.
So he qualified for that study, and wonderful. We were ecstatic.
Yes.
And at that point, I didn't know for sure, was it coconut oil, or was it pure luck, or you know what happened. I wasn't 100% sure. So I thought, well, but we're going to continue this.
Right.
And I had read in their application that some people did improve their very first day, the very first time they took it. So I thought, okay, well, he's maybe perhaps one of these people. So we're going to keep this going. And the next few days, I did continue to give it to him for breakfast. And then I started researching everything I could get my hands on about coconut oil, looking for recipes. Basically decided that maybe we'll convert over or do a little more of our cooking, you know, at other meals, you know, with coconut oil, adding it to that. And so I started researching ketones, and I came across the name of Dr. Richard Veach.